Hey friends, I heard a rumor that some people were wondering at lunch about what is the life cycle of a star. Yeah, I heard you were talking about it at lunch. No, I'm kidding, just kidding. But what is the life cycle of a star? You ever think about it? I know it's not lunchroom conversation. I mean, come on now. We know that talking sports really is. But anyway, we're getting off track. The life cycle of a star is an important thing in science because it gives you a real good idea of how the universe operates. The life cycle of a star. Now we have a star, but it's considered an average star by size. But how do they form? What's their life cycle? Well, you'll be fun to have to find out that they start with what's called a nebula. A nebula. It's spelled like that. Nebulae. Nebula. They say, what is a nebula? Well, a nebula happens to be just a bunch of gas and particles in space that are near each other, probably when a proximity of thousands or millions of miles, and they're going at a speed that's incredibly fast. And then somehow, some way, maybe a gravitational pull of one of the objects kind of just draws them together, and then the chemical and nuclear reactions start to take place. And then as these gathering particles come closer together, you see the nuclear reactions take place, and then you see the formation of a star. Helium, hydrogen atoms start to, have nuclear explosions, and that's where you get the shine, the brightness of the star. So you have a star formed from the nebula. That's right, folks. A star is born from the nebula. Now, the star can be anywhere from 8,000 degrees to 30,000 degrees Celsius on the surface. It depends on the size. But a star like ours is, like I said, average. So that's about the range, around 8,000 degrees, somewhere around 8 to 30,000. Well, as time passes, maybe a few million years, even a star like ours gets a little tired because there's going to be less fuel. It starts to run out of fuel. And what happens is it gets larger. It's about 100 times the mass. It's called a red giant. A red giant. It's about 100 times bigger than ours, but it's got fuel is starting to run low. And so it's a red giant, and it is starting to run its course, right? Now, what happens to a red giant? And suddenly a red giant becomes a red dwarf. It goes to about 10% the mass of the diameter of a regular star like we have here, the sun. It gets to be about 10% of that mass. And it gets a little bit cooler, too, maybe around 3,000 degrees or so, or whatever. Yeah, that 8,000 degrees, yeah, that's called cooler. I know, it gets a little hilarious there. Then it goes to becoming a white dwarf, where it gets kind of hot, but it gets to be about 1% of the density of our star. Pretty tiny little object, but it's still shining that light because of the chemical and the nuclear reactions going on. That white dwarf is still there. Well, it's finally reaching its part where it's about ready to say goodbye to the universe. And how does it do it? It does it by exploding into a supernova. And that supernova is 1,000,000 times brighter than a regular star, and it shoots out there so everybody can see it. That's the end of a star, and that supernova suddenly forms these things called neutron stars. That's neutrons and protons coming together into different particles, and they become neutron stars. Well, finally, after the neutron star is created, the gravity's kind of coming back into play. And when the gravity comes back into play, it starts pulling the light in to itself. And that's where you're seeing that a star is basically dead. And that light being pulled into itself is what they call a black hole. When the light comes in, you can't see anything but darkness because the gravitational force is so strong that the light's being pulled in. And so are other particles being pulled in. So yes, folks, that's what you would call the life cycle of a star. Boy, do you call it exciting? Do you have a time of weeping? Or do you go, it's time for lunch? I'm kidding. That was a really bad joke. So here we go, folks. How do you like that? The life cycle of a star. Any questions? Hey, I hear your awesome science teacher can do an even better job answering your questions. Talk to you later.